Hi, leaders. So in this station, we're going to take a look at poetic devices. In front of you on the screen is a list of commonly heard poetic devices that are used within poems: similes, metaphors, personification, onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, rhyming, and rhythm. Today, we're going to take a look at the way a poem is structured or laid out, as well as some rhyming. So far we've been looking at the poem's content, or what the story is telling. Now we're going to take a look at this poem's form or structure. I'm going to have you open up your Poet's Journal to 1.2 or page 8. So here you can see, let me skim through this page, and it lists that there are special terms that relate to a poem. So in poetry, it's usually written in lines or a group of lines called stanzas. Sometimes a stanza could be a single line. It can also consist of lines that just are a short phrase or even just a single word. And sometimes these lines are also complete sentences. So a stanza could be a simple line, or it could be multiple lines. A stanza is usually separated by another stanza with an extra space called a stanza break. Now, in our book, let me pop up our reading. This would be considered a stanza break. Right in between here, there's a nice little chunk in between the paragraphs. Now, down here on the third page, we see a bracket with lots of little lines. This does not indicate a stanza break. This actually indicates that a part of the poem was removed, or an excerpt of the poem was removed. So right after I'm going to eat you anyway, there's actually more to that story before they fast forward to a few weeks later. So they actually took it out for our purposes, but there is an even longer version of this poem. All right, so if we look at stanza one starts with, "As soon as Wolf began to feel," and it goes all the way down to, "He's going to eat me up," she cried. I want you to draw a star by the stanza break after stanza one. So you should have drawn a star about here. This is the first stanza break. Now, I'd like you to take a moment and I want you to count the number of lines that there is in the first stanza. You could label these if you wanted to as well. All right, so count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The first stanza consists of 8 lines. So if you didn't label them or number them, you can do that now, or you can simply just write that there are 8 lines next to number 2. Number 3, we're going to count the number of stanzas in the poem, not the number of lines, but the stanzas. So for this, it's going to be very important to be watching for our page breaks. Take notation here that it says not a stanza break, because they just ran out of page room on that page, so it has to get printed on the next page. All right, so let's count the number of stanzas. We have stanza 1, stanza 2 that actually continues to the top of the next page. Stanza 3 begins with, "What great big ears you have, Grandma." Stanza 4 begins with, "He sat there watching her and smiled," and actually continues all the way to the end, because if you remember, we notated that these dotted lines is not a stanza break. So there are 4 stanzas in this poem. I'm going to now give you a couple of moments with your partner to answer number 4 and number 5. Number 4 says the word stanza comes from an Italian word that means little room. Why might this be the word used to describe a group of lines in a poem? And number 5 says, what do the stanzas in a poem have in common with the rooms of a building? I'll give you about 3 minutes. All right, so for part 2, we're going to take a look at rhyme. Remember that rhyming words end with the same sound, and that poems with a rhyme scheme or a pattern of rhyming words usually put those words at the end of lines. So let's take a look at the first stanza. We're going to take a look at the first 4 lines. And she was absolutely right. He ate her up in one big bite. But Grandma was small and tough, and Wolf wailed, that's not enough. So, what's the first set of words that you hear that rhyme? You should be thinking right and bite. The second set of words that we hear rhymed are tough and enough. So notice that I took 2 different colors to highlight these. These are just to help me see that they're grouped together and that bite and tough aren't rhyming. It's right and bite and tough and enough. So we're going to take a look at your activity page. This is the second part. And we're going to take a look at this stanza. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes. And I want you to use a colored pencil to underline each set of words with the same ending. So we already did the first 2 together. So you could alternate and do the next color blue and then green and then blue and the green and keep going, or you could do a rainbow of colors. But I don't want you to concentrate on the colors. I want you to concentrate on finding the rhyming pairs. 3 minutes. All right, so let's see what I identified and make sure that you have identified the same. And again, the colors don't matter. All right, I identified feel and meal, yelping and helping, leer and hear, hood and wood, clothes and those, hat and that, hair and chair, and red and said. That kind of goes off the page there. So we have a good rhyming scheme here. And again, the nice thing about coloring it is that your eye gravitates to the pairs. It helps you identify the pairs that are. So let's review some of these key terms. Rhyming is two or more words that have the same ending or sound. Stanza is a group of lines in a poem, and a stanza break occurs between stanzas. Thanks for joining me on the station today.